Hey there Nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and welcome back to another episode of Meat for the Grinder Season 2, our series dedicated to Necromunda Dark Uprising Battle Reports. Meat for the Grinder is a Necromunda campaign set in the final days of Hive Arcos, where Chaos, Xenos, and Order clash for control of a collapsing Hive City. And on today's episode, two gangs will be throwing it down in a takeover scenario. That's going to be Soylent Green of the Corpse Grinder Cults, played by my friend Dark Lord Mac, as well as my friend Sister Serial, playing Precinct 13 of the Palanite Enforcers. So just in case if Mark Morrison's Return of the Mac did not give it away, Dark Lord Mac is back on this battle report. And in this scenario, he's going to try to take over some territories that are controlled by the Palanite Enforcers and try to spread the influence of chaos on the tabletop. Meanwhile, my friend Sister Serial, of course, is going to try to stop that from happening by using bolters, blades, as well as Lord Helmwar's authority to prevent that from happening. Now, because this video will be a little bit more of a deeper dive, I will put timestamps in the description box down below, so if you want to click and to navigate to a particular part of the video that interests you the most, feel pleased for you to do so. So that being said, let's talk about exactly what rosters my friends are bringing for this one.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
So the scenario for this one is called Takeover. Pretty much my friend Dark Lord Max will be playing the attacker, while Sister Sarah will be playing the defender on this one. Sister Sarah will actually get randomly 10 selected fighters who defend her territory, while Dark Lord Max is a customized 10 of his fighters to show up on the tabletop as well. Pretty much the idea is that the attacker is making a prepared attack against the defender's territory, so they will deploy first. And the idea here is that there's 3 different landmarks that need to be secured, and whoever has the most fighters controlling that landmark within 3 inches of it is the one that actually controls it by the end phase. You earn victory points for every landmark that you manage to take, earning basically 1 victory point for every one you take. At the same time, you also earn additional bonus experience point for your fighters if they manage to secure a landmark as well. The victory condition is if the attacker manages to capture all 3 landmarks, or if there are only fighters left in the battlefield at the end of the round, then the attackers are victorious. Otherwise, the defender also wins. Now, for the rewards on this one, the attacker earns d6 times 10 credits to their stash for each landmark they manage to capture, while the defender earns 2d6 times 10 credits if they manage to secure that as well. For experience points, each fighter earns earns 1 point of experience point that actually participates in the battle, and of course if they manage to capture a landmark, they earn a bonus point of experience. At the same time, the victorious gang in this battle report earns D3 points reputation, and if either gang bottles out, of course, they lose 1 point reputation. And it should also be noted as well, we're also using our reality waiver special rule for a campaign week on this battle report, which basically means you can actually go through walls and buildings and such. You have to roll a D6 to see if you can actually safely do so. On a roll of 1 or 2 though, you go out of action and you take a lasting injury, so you do have to keep that in mind if you decide to walk through the walls on this one. Up to this point of this campaign week, no gang decided to use that because they didn't want to risk taking that chance, but my 2 friends in this one have no problem doing so. So let's talk about battle grounds real quick. As you can see, there is a long hallway with different terrain features spread throughout the entirety of the tabletop. Dark Lord Mac is upon the left hand side with his Corpse Grinder cult. On the right hand side is Sister Cyril and her Precinct 13. Pretty much what my friends' plans are is to try to secure the landmarks, which are pretty much in the center of the Zone Mortalis table. How they're good about doing so, of course, I didn't really ask too much. The reason why is because I'm not playing this battle report, I'm just recording for this one. So I didn't want to really, have them spill the beans on their tactics. That way it can give an unfair advantage to their opponent. Suffice to say though, they're going after landmarks, so right next to the Corpse Grinder cult is landmark number 1, which is this beautiful shanty that was built by Iron Major, as well as some of the walls that you see here on the Zone Mortalis tabletop. He did a beautiful job making that. So that is landmark number 1, which the Corpse Grinder cult are going to try to secure on the very first turn. Landmark number 2 is actually in the very top center of the battlefield, represented by that little control panel on the top of the river there. At the same time though, my friend Dark Lord Mac was able to deploy 3 of his fighters for his initiates using infiltrate special rules, so that way they can actually try to capture that second landmark right at the start of the battle. And finally, landmark number 3 is on the far right hand side. Is a motor pool of 2 vehicles next to that fuel dump that's right in front of the deployment area for Sister Cyril and her Precinct 13 gang. Alright, so let's go and talk about deployment next. So starting with Dark Lord Mac down the bottom there, we have Rictus, followed by Corpus Colossus. Right in the center there, that is Skinner Secundus, and right behind him is the People Eater. That makes up that southern bottom fire team. For the rest of the gang on the top half of the deployment area, starting from the top and working our way down is Griver. Right behind them on the left hand side is Motionless in White, which is the gang's butcher, and then right in front of her is another Skinner named Canto the Cleaver, who's armed with a 2-handed axe. And that pretty much makes up Dark Lord Mac's deployment on this one. And if you want to see some more information about these fighters, please feel free to take a look at the rosters for their stats as well as the weapons and equipment. And deploy on the top next to that landmark number 2 on the far right hand side, that character's name is Molek. Right in the center is Deep Rock of the Flames, and the left hand side is Zest the Mucker. All 3 of those guys are initiates. So moving on to my friend Sister Cyril over here on the top, she has a fire team in the back center led by Judge Purge, who's a Palanite captain. Also in that unit too is Judge Mad Maddox, which is a subjugator sergeant. We also have Colt X822, as well as Judge Darko, as well as Akron LV426. And make up deployment on the bottom right hand side, another fire team in the center back, that is Drake V284, which is a subjugator Palanite and Sergeant. At the same time, he's also got 2 fighters named Judge Herschel's also located in this group, as well as Gosling L300. And then right in front of them, of course, are 2 rookies, Pelham 123, Acosta D12, as well as Tracker 13, which is the hard case Cybermastiff. And of course, if you want to see more details about what these guys are carrying, what kind of equipment they have, please feel free to check the description box below to click onto the roster if you want to see individual skills, stats, weapons, etc. So with that being said, we go directly top of turn number 1. My friends roll off for initiative to see which of them will be going first. They actually rolled a tie to begin with, so they rolled again, and the Gene Stealer cults managed to grab this one. So because that, Dark Lord Mac will be going first with Soylent Green, his Corpse Grinder cult. And for his very first activation, decided to do a group activation with Motionless in White, who basically does a group activation with both Griever as well as Canto the Cleaver, and both those guys are going to be bum rushing forward. As you can see, Dark Lord Mac did a move action with all 3 of those fighters right next to landmark number 1, so that way they can secure it. And at the same time, not only do they manage to secure it, they're within 3 inches of it, but they also earn a bonus experience point if they also capture 2 by the end phase. So jumping back across the other side of the tabletop, Sister Cyril does a group activation, activating Judge Purge. Also activates, I believe that's Judge Darko, as well as for Acheron LV426 as well. So those guys will all be doing a group activation here in a second. So for the first activation, Judge Acheron LV426 actually moves up in order to try to open fire with his concussion carbine directly into the middle of the group as well. He actually takes a cool check to see if he actually passes target priority, and because he decides to go past, he decides to fire his concussion carbine right in the middle of the 3 initiates who are securing landmark number 1. As you can see, Acheron LV-426 had no problem managing to land that blow right directly between all three of those fighters as well. He needs a 4-up in order to hit those guys, as well as a 4-up to wound as well. So because that Deep Trunk of the Flames, Zest the Mucker, as well as Molech are all caught under the blast template, and they 6s in order to save, in order to make sure they survive. What ends up happening though, that actually 2 of these fighters actually end up being okay, because Acheron LV-426 failed to wound those guys. However, though, Deep Trunk of the Flame does take a flesh wound, however, so he does take injuries, and to make matters worse, he also gets pushed to the wall as well. So as you can see in the aftermath, of course, the fighters actually got pushed around. They actually got pinned too, and basically do the weapon traits as well. They also suffer -2 to their initiative. That's why you have the little yellow dice representing that as well. Now, 2 of the guys got pushed out to the sides along the river, away from the center control panel there. But Deep Trunk of the Flame, however, though, he got pushed all the way through the door, which means he has to take a roll to see if he actually suffers any kind of injury or maleffect by going through that wall, since the Reality Waiver special rule is in effect this campaign week. Unfortunately for Deep Trunk of the Flame, however, he does fail that test because it does go out of action, so he has to roll on a serious injury to see exactly what happens to him. Rolls up a 53, means he suffers a head injury. So because it does go to recovery, and he also loses 1 to his willpower as well as 1 to his intelligence score. So just like that, first blood goes directly to Sister Serial. Now, unfortunately for Sister Serial, she tries to do the same thing with Judge Purr, trying to go through the wall, but unfortunately she rolls a 1 for him, so as she rolls up to see exactly what ends up happening for his lasting injury, he automatically goes out of action, but rolling out cold results. He's going to make a full recovery, no problem whatsoever. Judge Dark, however, actually does a move forward in order to get directly towards that corner, so that way he can lay some suppressive fire down against landmark number 2 later on the battle report. So as not to be outdone by Sister Serial, Dark Lord Mac decides to activate Molech next, which is one of his initiates armed with auto pistol with man-stopper rounds as well as a boning sword. Molech does take a basic action to get back on his feet again, and another basic action open fire with his auto pistol directly into Judge Darko, but unfortunately for him though, he misses his shot, just absolutely just clear blast right past him, so because of that, no harm, no foul at this point. Going back across the table to Sister Serial, she does another group activation with Drake V284, who does also a group activation with the Palanite rookies Pelham 123 as well as Tracker 13, because Tracker 13 does belong to Pelham 123. At the same time, also doing exactly the same thing to Acosta D12, which are the 2 Palanite rookies. All 3 of those fighters do a move activation, going across the battlefield as quick as they can, taking a point between those 2 walls. At the same time, putting those guys in 3 inches of landmark number 1, so that way they can also, landmark number 3, so that way they can also earn bonus experience points and also manage to capture that landmark for themselves in this battle report. For Dark Lord Mac's activation, he decides to activate the People Eater, which is one of his cutters, who does a group activation with Skinner Secundus, which is one of his skinners who's armed with a chain glaive. Both those fighters also do a move action, moving as quick as they can directly towards landmark number 1, so that they can definitely secure that landmark for their gang, and at the same time get themselves some bonus experience points as well. Sister Serial then decides to activate her subjugated patrolman, Judge Herschel. This guy is the one who's been kicking butt and taking names with that SLHG sledge assault ram with that grenade launcher. Did some pretty cool stuff and pretty impressive things throughout the campaign so far, so she decides to activate that fighter next. Sister Serial does a move activation with Judge Herschel, who moves twice his maximum amount directly towards the middle of the fuel dump, definitely securing that landmark for his team in order to securing those bonus experience points for himself. Dark Lord Mac then also does a group activation with Rictus, as does a group activation with Corpus Colossus. These are his 2 other cutters who are armed with rotary flinching saws, and those guys get activated next. Those 2 fighters also do move activation directly towards landmark number 1, and the reason why all my friends are huddling their fighters around these landmarks is because they want to take advantage of that bonus experience point. So these guys can potentially get 2 experience points right off the bat, 1 for participating in the battle report, and another 1 for securing a landmark. So I really can't blame my friends for huddling their forces around these landmarks in order to get these experience points that they so desperately need. So the rest of the turn is actually just based on my friends just having activating fighters and moving them, so we're just going to go this really quick. So the next guy that Dark Lord Mac activates is Zest the Mucker. Zest the Mucker get back on his feet again for his basic action, another basic action to move up behind Eleanor to help support Molech from the attack that's coming from the left-hand side. At the same time, Sister Serial also activates Colt X822 as well as Gosling L300, and then finally, of course, Mad Maddox, which is a Subjugator Sergeant armed with a concussion ran, and those guys also make move activations directly towards landmark number 1. As you can see, Sister Serial moves these guys directly up to the walls. I think she's going to try to have them go through the wall using that Reality Waiver special rule, even though she did lose her sergeant or her Palanite captain earlier, but just basically kind of justifies the risk up to this point. And that pretty much makes up the action phase for turn number 1. So that takes us directly to the end phase, and here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, both gangs are slowly making their way directly towards the center of the battlefield for the inevitable confrontation between the both of them. At the same time, they're also securing landmarks. And speaking of those landmarks, Dark Lord Mac manages to secure landmark number 1 and get captured by Soylent Green. Every single one of those fighters on those screen earns an additional experience point for managing to capture that landmark. And to make matters worse for the Palanite Enforcers, landmark number 2 also gets captured by Soylent Green as well, so Dark Lord Mac managed to give 1 experience point to all of his fighters next to that landmark. And finally, Serial is able to secure landmark number 3, captured by Precinct 13, so all of those fighters in this picture also receives a bonus experience point as well. And just like that, 2 of the landmarks are currently held by Soylent Green of the Corpse Grinder Cult, while only 1 belongs to Sister Serial and her Precinct 13 Palanite Enforcers. So because of the next turn is going to be very important as these guys try to fight it out in order to secure landmarks for themselves. So we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and both of my friends roll off for priority to see which of them will be going first. So we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and the Palanite Enforcers managed to earn the initiative on this one, so my friend Sister Sarah will be going first, and she will be activating her Palanite Enforcers to do so. So for her very first activation, Sister Sarah activates Judge Darko, which is a Palanite Patrolman who's armed with a Forcer bolt gun. He also has a stub gun as well with dum-dum rounds. Instead of actually taking the risk to shoot this guy, she decides to commit this guy forward by charging directly into close combat. So she does manage to stick the landing with the charge, but unfortunately when Judge Darko attacks, he manages to fail to hit. All of his hits actually failed on that one, so because of that, now he's exposed against a Corpse Grinder Initiate who's armed with a Boning Sword as well as an Auto Pistol with Man-Stopper round, so kind of a really bad move. In my opinion, I would have actually held this guy back at open fire with the bolt gun, but you know, it's my friends' game, so they do what they want to do. Unfortunately for Dark Lord Mac, though, when he actually activated Mulek to fight back against Judge Darko, he failed to wound. He managed to hit him twice, but when it came to his wounds, though, one failed to wound, the other one actually went through. One of them actually did manage to wound, but Sister Sarah was able to get the armor save for Judge Darko, so he was perfectly fine. So these two guys just kind of stare at each other menacingly now on the shores of this little sewage river on the northern part of the map. So for our next activation, Sister Sarah activates Akron LV-426, who is the patrolman armed with a concussion carbine. She does a simple movement to actually move up as normal movement allows, so that way he gets closer to fire with his concussion carbine directly at Zest the Mucker in the back there, but unfortunately for those, she failed to hit, so because of that, the shot doesn't land and wasted her activation on that one, unfortunately. So to prevent the Palanite Enforcers from taking landmark number 2, Dark Lord Mac decides to activate Zest the Mucker, who decides to do a double action to charge directly into Judge Darko. Zest the Mucker does nail the landing in order to charge directly into Judge Darko. It does attack with his Butcher's Cleaver as well as his Auto Pistol Man-Stopper rounds. Unfortunately, even though he does manage to hit, he fails to wound. His Auto Pistol actually rolls a 1 for the hit on that one, so nothing much happened there. The Butcher's Cleaver did manage to wound Judge Darko, but he managed to armor save it, so because that's just a bunch of failure in terms of fighting over here on the northern side of the tabletop. So my friends are kind of frustrated at the fight that's taking place on the top of the table, and to be honest, I really don't blame them. So, Sister Serial does a group activation with Drake V284, who also does a group activation with Pelham 123, Tracker 13, as well as with Akasa D12. That entire fire team does a move activation directly through the center area of the battlefield, directly towards that gate. It looks like what Sister Serial is going to try to do is try to flank these guys from the bottom of the table, going through that door, and enveloping the initiates on the top of the table in a full envelopment, so that way she can secure landmark number 2. Which is not a bad idea, because these guys are fast movers. At the same time, they also have the firepower and the combat ability to actually make an effect and to exploit if they were to do that in the next turn. Meanwhile, Dark Lord Mac does a group activation with Motionless and White, his Butcher, who does a group activation with Groover as well as Canto the Cleaver. Decides to actually activate Canto the Cleaver first. Canto the Cleaver declares a charge directly against Tracker 13, manages to stick the landing, and when he goes to that door without opening it, he manages to pass right through the wall because of the Reality Waiver special rule without suffering any harmful effects. So as you can see in this photo here, Groover does manage to slip right through, no problem. He's got 4 attacks when he needs order to get 3 ups in order to hit with those paired Butcher Chain Cleavers. Only managed to hit once, oddly enough, as weird as it may sound. So of course he does have to roll to wound to see if he actually sticks the wound on Tracker 13. Has no problem actually securing that wound, getting a 4 up in order to hurt the Cyber Mastiff as well. Now, because of the -2 AP, the Cyber Mastiff doesn't get any armor saves, and at the same time also suffers 2 damage as well. Now, originally we thought that the Cyber Mastiff actually had 2 wounds. We looked up at the stats later on and realized only had 1 wound. So when they rolled for the injury on that, got double skulls with the out of action results. Because that got to roll for out of action on that part. So when it was all said and done, rolled a 13, which is out cold. So because of that, the Tracker 13 is perfectly fine. So unfortunately, Tracker 13 does go out of action with Convalescence, so it's going to make a full recovery, no problem, but it just won't be able to do any post-actions, but it doesn't really matter though because it's a Cyber Mastiff, so nothing much is going to happen there. However, Griever does do a follow-through, however, it goes directly into Pelham 123 and actually engages that rookie in close combat as well. So up next, Dark Lord Mac does send Conto the Cleaver to go directly through that door. Unfortunately though, when he rolls for the Reality Waiver special rule, he fails his test, so he does take a lasting injury. Suffers a hobbling injury on top of that, so because he loses 1 to his wound allowance, dropping down to movement 4 at the same time, he also goes to recovery as well. Unfortunately, the gamble didn't work out for my buddy Dark Lord Mac. So finish up the last of that group activation, Motionless in White. Instead of going through the door, she decides to open the door instead. So she does a simple action, go directly towards the control panel of the door, does another simple action using an intelligence test to open the door, which she passes no problem. The door flies open, and now that corridor and that avenue of approach is now open for the rest of the Corpse Grinder cultists to move through that area. So my friend Cicero has a lot she's got to be able to deal with here in a second. So now to be outdone by the Corpse Grinder cults, my friend Sister Sarah decides to activate Judge Herschel, who's the subjugated patrolman who's armed with that assault sledge ram. He does a simple action to go through the wall using the Reality Waiver special rule, and he decides to open fire with his, the auxiliary grenade launcher of his sledge assault ram, firing choke gas grenades directly at 2 of the fighters, which our names are Corpus Colossus as well as for Skinner Secundus as well. Now he doesn't need to take a willpower test on that, we're going to explain why that's the case here in a second. So as you can see, he managed to land that shot perfectly right between those 2 fighters as well, catches those guys in a cloud of smoke, managed to roll perfect 6s in to get past their toughness test for that choke gas grenade, managed to put a flesh wound directly onto Skinner Secundus and put an out of action result directly onto Corpus Colossus as well. In fact, Corpus Colossus rolls a 62, which is a critical injury. Now the reason why he's able to do this is because, without taking a willpower test, is because technically speaking, Judge Herschel isn't shooting at either one of these fighters. Now, this is the number one thing when it comes to this is where our Commander Cheapskate's going to go a little bit on a rant. A lot of players have a lot of beef with Corpse Grinder cultists, saying they're overpowered because of all the abilities they have, etc, etc, etc. It's not a new topic that's been up there. And the reason why that is the case is because it is primarily a skill issue, in my opinion, is why a lot of players struggle with Corpse Grinder cults, because you can see right here that blast template isn't centered on any one of these fighters. It is centered in the space between these fighters and to the front of it. So because Judge Herschel is shooting on a point on the ground and not the actual fighters, he doesn't have to take a willpower test in order to fire at these guys with his grenade launcher. All he has to do is be able to stick the landing on that grenade, which he perfectly did. Now these 2 fighters, of course, are caught in the blast radius of the gas cloud because of that, and they do suffer injuries because of that. So if you're one of those players who are struggling with Corpse Grinder cults, just realize that blast template weapons like this is how you get around the Corpse Grinder cults' willpower test. Just aim around them and catch them in the circumference and the the radius of the blast template, and you'll always put these guys down. If not kill them, you'll definitely pin them, which is basically like murder for Corpse Grinders cults, because when they're pinned, they can't charge. So I don't want to hear any complaints about this. It's a real simple solution. Start applying that in your games. So as you can see, Skinner Secundus suffers a flesh wound, so because he is currently pinned, and also 1 toughness less, and then Corpus Colossus also suffers a critical injury, which you'll need to do a medical escort mission at the end of the battle report to see exactly what happens to that guy. Unfortunately for my friend Dark Lord Mac, though, he does have to take a cool test for Rictus, who does fail his cool test, so because he does go back 10 inches the opposite direction, hiding behind that barrier there, just because he doesn't want to get killed by Judge Herschel. And to be perfectly honest, I understand the rationale. Meanwhile, Dark Lord Mac decides to do a group activation with the People Eater, who also does a group activation on Skinner Secundus as well. The People Eater does a move action all the way across the battlefield directly towards Motionless in White in order to back her up. At the same time, Skinner Secundus also does a basic action to get back on his feet again, and another simple action to move up forward his normal wound allowance in order to catch with the rest of his group. Now he is, of course, suffering a flesh wound that makes him toughness, I believe, toughness 3, but because of that, though, it's not a big deal because he can still fight, still very deadly, all things considered. So for Cicero's next activation, she says to activate Judge Darko. He's going to do a double action to charge right through that wall with the Reality Waiver special rule in order to fight the initiatives on the top of the battlefield. Manages to go through the walls, no problem whatsoever, and actually gets involved in the melee. Unfortunately for him, though, he does fail to hit, so because of that, not much really happens there. Possess the Mucker, of course, does return attacks back, but also fail to wound. So once again, just a bunch of failures taking place right here at the top of the tabletop, with these guys unable to hit or wound each other, unfortunately. And because all the Corpse Grinders have been activated in this round, the only fighters left who haven't been moved are Palanite Enforcers. Sister Cyril decides to activate Mad Maddox, which is their subjugated patrolman armed with the concussion ram. Mad Maddox does a simple action go through the wall with no problem, and does another basic action open fire with his heavy concussion ram, needing a 3 in order to shoot directly at Motionless and White as well. Also managed to pass his willpower test because he is specifically shooting at her. He does manage her no problem, at the same time also managed to put a wound on her as well, and unfortunately for my buddy Dark Lord Mac, he was unable to save the wound that he took from the heavy concussion ram. The concussion ram does, of course, eat right through the armor of Motionless and White as well. Those walls are 2 wounds, but when Arklor Matt actually rolled to see exactly what happened to her, rolled a flesh wound on that one, so he got really lucky on that. So Motionless and White is now on the ground, currently bleeding right now with a flesh wound. She is only toughness 3 now, so she's a little bit easier to wound, but Motionless and White can still move, she can still fight, she is still very much a threat, so you do have to be wary of that fighter. Sister then activates Gouging L300, which is one of her Palanite Patrolman armed with an Enforcer shotgun who's right next to that motor pool. He also does a move activation going directly towards the center of the battlefield, heading directly to that door there in the bottom, the center portion of the battlefield. And I think the reason why Sister is doing that, so that way this character can kind of go around the flank and maybe catch these guys with Shredder ammo, so that way she can get them all on the blast, the template attack. But we'll talk about that later, because right now this makes up end of turn number 2. So that takes us directly to the end phase of turn number 2, and here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, both forces are now currently fighting it out right in the middle of the tabletop as well. There's a huge melee taking place on the northern top of the battlefield, where the Palanite Enforcers as well as the Corpse Grinder cultists are fighting for control of landmark number 2. Meanwhile, Sister Sarah is setting up her Palanite Enforcers, creating firing lines to open fire directly at the Corpse Grinders as they make their way across the battlefield as well. So with that being said, let's go and talk about recovery rolls real quick. There's only one recovery roll that needs to be made this round, that is Rictus, which is the cutter who actually fled earlier because he failed his cool test. He does manage to pass his cool test this time around, so because he also earns a bonus experience point and turns 180 degrees, that way he can start engaging the fighters in the next turn. So with that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 3. So at the top of turn number 3, both my friends roll off for priority to see which of them will go in first, and because of that, the Corpse Grinder cults managed to take the initiative on this one, so Dark Lord Mac will be activating first in turn number 3. For his very first activation, he does a group activation with both the People Eater, who does a group activation with Skinner Secundus, and he actually sends these guys charging forward directly into the Palanite rookies right in front of them. And as you can imagine, all kinds of chaos are going to happen. So the People Eater versus Pelham 123, he gets 6 attacks on the charge because of his frenzy attacks, getting 4 to hit as well as 2 to wound. As you can see right in this picture here, managed to get 5 attacks off. So because he has to roll 5 attack dice, managed to wound, I believe, 4 times. So because of that, that -2 armor from the chain glaive cuts right through the armor of Pelham 123. So he takes a bunch of injury dice, as you can see in this photo. Ends up, of course, going out of action, no problem. So because he does have to roll up on the last injury table to see what exactly happens to him, rolls a 44, so because that he suffers an eye injury. Meanwhile, Skinner Secundus goes directly into Drake V2A4. He gets 3 attacks on the charge. Yes, he got 3 up to hit with his chain glaive. Managed to secure all 3 of those hits as well. Gold needs to get a 3 up to wound. Managed to secure 2 wounds on top of that. Kind of go with the armor save on this one, but unfortunately for Drake V284, he fails one of his armor save and eats up his wounds as well. So he has to roll an injury die to see what happens to him. Goes out of action as well. When it comes up for the out of action roll, rolls up a hand injury on that part. So that part is absolutely horrific, which means that Drake V284 will also have to go to recovery. So to add an insult to injury, as you can see, Pelham 123 does suffer his eye injury, loses 1 point to his Ballista skill, so now he's Ballista skill 6, making him go to recovery, and Drake V284 also suffers a hand injury, losing 1 point to his weapon skill, and he also goes in recovery as well, and managed to secure those victory points and experience points for his fighters. So in response to this, Sister Sarah then activates Judge Herschel with his Sledge Assault Ram because he's to go directly into the People Eater. Judge Herschel does charge 4, but unfortunately he does manage to hit the People Eater once, but fails to wound, so because of that, he is now currently exposed against the wrath of the People Eater, and just like that, the People Eater, of course, is going to attack back. The People Eater, of course, has 2 attacks, needs 4 to hit, managed to hit once as well, so because he's going to need a 2 up in order to wound Judge Herschel, and actually when he managed to wound him, managed to cut right through him as well, so that part was kind of brutal. So because that Judge Herschel, of course, does need to take an armor test, he fails an armor test, so because he's going to take 2 damage on top of that. So of course when they roll for the injury dice to see exactly what ends up happening for him, suffers a serious injury as a result of that, and because he's going to finish out the coup de grace real quick, as you imagine, he's going to go out of action, suffering a 56 on that part, so that part was absolutely horrific. So Judge Herschel goes out of action with a critical injury, so because he will need to take a medical escort mission to see if he actually survives or not. So just like that, our friend Sister Sarah is actually feeling kind of queasy about it because she's losing fighters left and right to the Corpse Grinder cultists, so she decides to kind of call the game early. And unfortunately for Sister Cheryl, she decides to surrender at this point, ending the game prematurely, and a victory for the Corpse Grinder cult as well. And to be perfectly honest, I really don't blame my friend Sister Cheryl, because we just know that those guys are going to slice through anybody that's in front of their way, unless of course they do something really crazy to actually take those guys out. So that being said, we're going to go directly to the post game, because this battle report is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
So this is now time for the post game. So first of all, let's talk about what the Palanite Enforcers are Precinct 13, played by my friend Serial. Unfortunate for her though, she did fail this battle report. Now she does have some good benefits from this. Of course, she has Lord Helmore's coffers, but unfortunate for her though, she didn't manage to secure any dice for herself on that one from her benefit from being in line with orders, so not much really happens there. So with that being said, let's talk about injuries real quick. Unfortunately for Sister Cheryl, she suffered 5 injuries on this one. Judge Purgers, of course, went out of action earlier because he tried to go through a wall, suffered an out cold result, so makes a full recovery, so no harm, no foul there. Drake V284 did suffer a head injury, so he does go to recovery, and he also loses 1 point to his weapon skill as well. Now, Judge Herschel, of course, did suffer a critical injury, so they had to do a medical escort mission for him with Trauma 13, and when they rolled up for the critical injury on this part, actually managed to patch him up. He rolled convalescence, so because he makes a full recovery, so no problem there, which is kind of nice. Now, as for Pelham 123, he did suffer a eye injury, so because he does go into recovery as well, it also loses 1 point to his ballistic skill. At the same time, Tracker 13 also rolled a convalescence for his injury, and he makes a full recovery, no problem. As for advancements, a few of our fighters did advance during this time period. So Drake V284 actually leveled to level 1, and because of that, Sister actually spent his experience points to purchase another point of a weapon skill. So even though Drake V284 did suffer a hand injury earlier, it's neutralized because that +1 to his weapon skill, so he's still at his base weapon skill, at the same time increases credit value by 20 credits. Colt X822 is also leveled to level 1, actually rolled on his advancement, rolled a +1 to his toughness, and also increased his credit value by 30 credits, so now he's toughness 4. Judge Herschel also leveled up as well when he rolled for the level up to level 2. When Sister Sarah rolled for his advancement, rolled +1 to his willpower, which is good, so that makes him willpower 6 now, which makes him handy against recovery from psychic attacks or from attacking corpse grinders, and that gives him also an increase of 5 credits to his value too. Mad Maddox, the subjugator patrolman is armed with the concussion ram, levels up to level 1 as well, rolls for his advancement and rolls a +1 to his cool, increasing his value by 10 credits, so now he is cool 6. Acheron LV426 also leveled up to level 1 as well, and when they rolled off to see exactly what his advancement was, rolled +1 to his willpower, so now he's willpower 6 and also increases his credit value by 5 credits. And then finally, Pelham 123, the rookie patrolman, also leveled up to level 1. For that one, of course, when he rolled to see exactly what happened to him, got +1 to his ballista skill, so because of that, increases credit value by 20 credits and also neutralized the penalty he suffered from his eye injury, so that part kind of worked out pretty well for Sister Serial. For her territories, for her Precinct Fortress, she recruited a new Paladin patrolman named Nate 111, is also earned 60 credits from that territory. From her Fungal Spall, she wasn't able to get any toxin traits for weapons, but she was able to drum up 30 credits from that territory. From the Ash Gate, they were able to recruit a new rookie Paladin patrolman named Judge Hershey, and also managed to score 110 credits from that territory. From their Wastelands territory, they managed to secure 30 credits from that, and from their Manufactorium level, they also earned 1 additional concussion carbine for free, as well as managed to drum up 50 credits to their stash. So at the trading post, they were able to draw up 280 credits from their territories, as well as combined with the 5 credits from their stash, giving 285 credits in total. With those 285 credits, they spent 245 of those to recruit a new Enforcers Sanctioner pattern automata called ABC Warrior Alpha 13 Alpha. He's armed with a pacifier assault claw, as well as a sledge pattern assault ram with an auxiliary grenade launcher that fires choke gas grenades as well as frag grenades. It also comes with a grenade launcher array that fires photon flash grenade, automated repair system special rule, mobile bulwark special rule, light carapace armor, as well as managed to also come back with the Got Your 6 special skill attached to it as well. They took the 40 Marine credits they had left over, they put that directly in the stash. At the same time, they also gave the Manufactorium level concussion carbine that they got from their territory and gave that to Nate 111. So as you can see, my friend Sister Serial managed to get another Paladin patrolman, Nate 111. It's going to cost 150 credits. He's got armored undersuit, flak armor, concussion carbine, as well as a stub gun for a backup weapon, as well as manacles. And at the same time, as you recruit Judge Hershey, who's a rookie Paladin patrolman, is armed with flak armor, as well as armored undersuit, as well as a normal stub gun with manacles for right now. For reputations, she's able to score 1 point reputation from her campaign week for this week, and when combined with the 7 that she had in the previous campaign week, gives her a grand total of 8 reputation in total. Her new record now is at 2 wins and 1 loss, and her new game rating now is at 3,140 points. So moving on, let's talk about Dark Lord Mac and Soylent Green, his Corpse Grinder cult, and we're going to talk about exactly what these guys did from actually managing to achieve victory in this battle report. So Dark Lord Mac, of course, did suffer a couple injuries. Corpus Colossus suffered a critical injury, so because they did have to go through a medical escort mission, but because they have the Meat Cutter, which is a rogue doc, they actually meant to go with that guy as well. When they rolled to see exactly what happened to him, they actually got an out cold result for that fighter, so because of that, Corpus Colossus made a full recovery, so no harm, no foul. Count of the Cleaver, however, did suffer a lasting injury by being hobbled by trying to go through a wall that he shouldn't have. Does suffer -1 to his movement allowance, so because he's only movement allowance 4 now, and at the same time he does go in recovery, so he will miss out on his next game. Detrock of the Flames also suffered a head injury as well, suffering -1 to his willpower as well as intelligence, and he also goes into recovery also, so he will miss out on his next battle report in addition to that. As for advancements, the People Eater did of course level up to level 1, managed to roll up on the combat skills and decided to roll up for that, take a chance on that, rolled Rain of Blows. So because now fighting for him is a simple action, and when combined with Dervish, that means he can fight 360 degrees at 2 inches with that chain glaive as his, and also increases credit value by 20 credits. So the People Eater, he is short and stout, but that fool will saw you in half if you try to mess with him. So from their territories, from their Chaos Fane, they're able to secure 30 credits from that territory, and from their Guild or Stronghold territory, they're able to recruit a new Skinner named Death Wears a Smile, who's actually equipped with the Butcher's Chain Cleaver, Skinner's Mask, as well as Plate Armor, and also managed to drum up 40 credits from that territory as well. From the Sentiment territory, they're able to recruit a new Initiate named the Fire Starter, who has Initiate's Mask as well as Flak Armor, and that guy also automatically came with a Bunning Sword, and they're able to round up 50 credits from that territory. And lastly, from the Manufactorium level, they managed to secure 1 set of Photo Goggles for free from that territory, as well as drum up 50 credits. In the trading post, they were able to secure 170 credits from their territories, and they also managed to secure 50 credits from the scenario as well as 10 credits from their stash, and when combined all together, they have the grand total of 230 credits in total. With those 230 credits, they purchased a Heavy Flamer for the Fire Starter, which costs 195 credits for that, as well as paid another 35 credits for paired Butcher Chain Cleavers for Death Wears a Smile as well. As you can see, this is Death Wears a Smile. He's a Skinner. He's got Skinner's Mask, Plate Armor, as well as paired Butcher Brain Cleavers. Also got the Berserker skill, as well as the Specialist special rule attached to him. And this is going to be the Fire Starter, whose initiates are with a Heavy Flamer. He's also got Flak Armor, Initiate's Mask, a Bunning Sword, Photo Goggles, and he's also got the Infiltrate special rule. So that guy is extremely deadly as well. In the end, the Soylent Green was able to secure an additional point of reputation from this campaign week, as well as 3 additional experience points from the scenario, and when combined with their previous set of reputation points, gives them 6 points of reputation total. Their current record now is at 1 win and 1 loss, and their new game rating now is at 2,735 points. So that's good to with you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blog.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good to do with this battle report, you guys. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out and stay classy.